So friends, today we are going to discuss social change. Although we have always been talking of social change and order and equilibrium on the one hand and change on the other are equally important issues to be discussed in sociology. But today we will spend 1 or 2 hours on a formal definition of social change, examples of social change, and some basic theories of change. I am aware that this is only an introductory course, so we will not go into advanced theories, but some theoretical discussion to put the issue of social change in a proper perspective. What are different paradigms or ways of looking at social change? The first definition. I looked at the definition of social change in different books, and I did not find any single simple definition of change. It appears that for most sociologists, social change refers to change in social structure. What is social structure? Social structure is usually defined in some of the early lectures in sociology courses when we are talking of differences between factual reality and normative reality. Society has both these aspects, a factual aspect, a normative aspect. And in normative aspect, we discuss statuses and roles, or position and roles. What are various positions in society and what are roles associated with society? Different positions, different statuses. Now, it is because of these roles and our upbringing in a society in which we start interpreting the abstract rules of society. We develop the ability to put ourselves in others' shoes, develop empathy, and understand how in a given situation other people will interpret the situation and our expectations from them. Expectations are rules. And somewhere in Kingsley Davis, I was reading that sum total of all normative or sanctioned or expected social relationships is social structure. In a specific case, you may talk of a relationship between father and son, husband and wife, teacher and student, officer and clerk, chief minister and other ministers, and other members of the party, the chief monk, other monks, and the laity. If you can just at an abstract level think of a sum total of all expected relationships or all normative relationships, that is social structure. Social structure is a very general term. Sometimes social structure is used in the sense as though it is the cause of other things in society, that social structure affects your beliefs. Social structure determines the degree of inequality in education. Social structure determines the law, family system, other things. Sometimes social structure may also be interpreted as class relations. Sometimes social structure is the output variable, that all institutions, facts of society create what may be called social structure. It is the ultimate normative social reality which tells us about what kind of relationships exist among people. So social structure is about relationships. Relationships between roles or positions and relationships between human beings are often used interchangeably, because when we talk of relationships among human beings, we are only referring to expected relationships between different positions. In sociology, individuals are not important. The positions they occupy and the relationships between those positions, that is important. So that is what social structure. Now, those sociology textbooks which follow this approach, that social change means change in structure, they do so for distinguishing social change from other types of changes. There are many types of changes taking place in society. For example, population change, size of population, for example, technical change or technological change, or economic development, economic change. Size of population may be increasing or decreasing. Technological change, man is considered to be a tool making animal, and from simple technology to advanced technology, there has been tremendous technological change in all societies. Economic change, per capita income, change in income, gross national income, net national income, and to convert that into some measure of welfare, say per capita income, as an indicator of welfare of the population. Now, they may be cause of social change. They may lead to social change. Or social change sometimes may lead to population change, technological change, economic change. Social structure itself may determine population change, what will be the rate of population growth, at what rate will technology change, or at what rate will modernization take place, technological modernization, economic modernization. What limits a social structure fixes for change in per capita income or economic growth? There is a relationship. But population change itself is not social change. Technological change itself is not social change. And economic change itself is not considered to be social change. Only those changes are considered to be part of social change which produce change in social structure. If only income changes, but the caste system, the class system, or whatever the social structure is, feudal system, estate system, slavery, caste, class, in all systems there is a possibility of improvement of per capita income. In all systems there have been times of fall in per capita income. Now that rise or fall in per capita income does not qualify to be called social change. Social change means change in social structure. Even at the same level of per capita income, if a feudal society changes into a guild society, a society changes from one based on agriculture to trade and commerce. New roles and relationships are created. Per capita income may not change, but then we will say there is social change. So social change is defined in some elementary textbooks of sociology. social change is defined as change in social structure, nothing else. So as such, or changes, sometimes there are changes in beliefs in the same religion, or there may be a change of religion. Mere change in beliefs about gods and goddesses, change in supernatural beliefs, does not qualify to be called social change. Only those changes which produce change in roles and relationships, social structure, are considered to be part of social change. This is one approach. According to this, social change refers to a change in structure of society. Social change is synonymous with change in social structure. But other books which take a more broader view of social change define social change in a more inclusive manner. So for them, change in cultural symbols, change in cultural symbols, change in social order, change in beliefs too sometimes, values, and change in practices. In the whole gamut of these things, cultural symbols, change in cultural symbols, change in social order, change in beliefs and values, and change in practices, social practices. Everything is part of social change. So this is a more inclusive kind of definition of social change. And this definition is restricted only to change in social order or social structure. But here, changes of other types, cultural symbols, social order, beliefs, values, and practices, all these things are part of social change. You know, as such, social change is taking place all times. All societies are always changing. But change may be slow or change may be fast. Sometimes social change takes place at such a slow pace that you may not recognize that society is changing. But sometimes change is very fast, and we say that we are passing through a period of transition. Many Indians today say that we are passing through a period of transition. Whether we are discussing caste or class or religion or family or political organization or gender issues, urban-rural differences, population, we know that in all respects Indian society is changing. And although there may not be any revolution as such, but it's changing quite fast. So all societies are always changing, yes. But sometimes change is very slow. And we do not see it, we do not recognize it. Many of us may say that there has been very little social change in some parts of the country. In remote areas, backward areas, tribal areas, in the northeast. in interior parts of Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, tribal areas, or in Kashmir, or in deep Himachal Pradesh, there is not much change, but actually there is change. Change in cities is very much visible. Cities are changing, that is very obvious. Their size has grown at a very fast rate. The characteristic of metropolitan cities has changed very significantly. Today's Banaras is not the same Banaras which it was 50 years ago, and today's Delhi is not that Delhi which was 50 years ago. Bangalore has changed tremendously in last 10 or 20 years only. Hyderabad is changed. So sometimes change is very fast. Change in certain parts of Africa may be slow. Change in certain parts of Latin America may be slow. And we may not realize, we may feel that in China there has not been much change, because we do not come across the factors of change in China, and we may think that it's the same China, same communist China, which was developed in Mao Zedong's time. But it's not so. Changes are everywhere. Changes in cultural symbols, changes in social order, changes in beliefs, values, what are standards of truth, beauty, goodness, values, practices. Practices, a very general term for all kinds of practices in all contexts. Practices in family context, practices in the context of education, politics. Perhaps today's president of, or the person holding the top position in Communist Party of China today is not as powerful as Mao Zedong was. And Manmohan Singh is not that powerful that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was. Change, this is change. We have become much more democratic, or maybe state has weakened, or we lack the trust, or society is disintegrating, or there is a process of pluralization, and different institutions of society are becoming more autonomous. Politics is not everything. And there is much more vocal voice of NGOs, civil society actors. There is much stronger bureaucracy, and there is much stronger media. That's why Prime Minister Manmohan Singh is not so powerful as Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was. Because in times of Jawaharlal Nehru, he himself was a high-level democrat person, but other things were not developed. So whatever Panditji will say, everybody will follow. And whatever Panditji speaks, then everybody appreciates that. I was reading in one fictional work of Vikram Sarabhai that Jawaharlal Nehru is speaking in Odisha, in rural areas, and lakhs of people are assembled. In Odisha of that time, remember Odisha of that time, today's Odisha is much more progress. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru is making his speech in Odisha, and lakhs of rural folk are assembled. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru is speaking in English. But every time he says something significant, everybody claps. So even though people did not understand what Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was saying, everybody was following. When our prime ministers speak, then everybody understands. They speak in Hindi and everybody understands. So situation has changed. Actually, there is no society today which has not passed through the process of social change. The people of, say, Kashmir, many people in Kashmir today identify very strongly with Islam. And many of them have been influenced by separatist policies or ideas promoted by our neighbor Pakistan. But Kashmiris were not always terrorist kind of, they are still not, all of them are not terrorist or separatist type. Kashmiris were not always even Muslim. There was a time when this whole area, Kashmir, Tibet, Mongolia, that had some religion, we don't know what that religion was, but a polytheistic kind of religion, maybe something close to polytheistic Hinduism, we don't know what kind of religion that. And some 1,000 years ago or so, people of Kashmir become Hindu, or before that they become Buddhist. From their own native religion, they become Buddhist. So there was a social change, which changed from their primitive, traditional, native kind of religion. When they became Buddhists, their cultural symbols changed, their social order changed, ways of thinking, beliefs, values changed. Now, in place of old shamanic kind of, a tantric kind of values and beliefs, they had Buddhist values and beliefs, practices. So, more importance to the new religious texts, Buddhist texts. Maybe, I don't know, some people say that Kashmiris were first, from their own native religion, they first became Hindus and then Buddhists. And then again Hindus, or some people say that they were first Buddhists and then Hindus. But there were cycles of, there were changes, there was paradigm shift in values and beliefs. So sometimes they followed their own traditional shamanic, magical, polytheistic kind of religion. Sometimes they became part of the larger Hindu society. Sometimes they became part of larger Buddhist society. I was reading history of Tibet, and I found that there are mention of how Buddhist Pandits from Kashmir went to Tibet several times to propagate Buddhist religion. And at some point of time, these Hindus and Buddhists became Muslims. When they became Muslims, then everything changed. Cultural symbols changed, social order changed, beliefs, values. That affects everything. Even their relationship with larger society, with the nation. Relationship with India has been changing. It was not always the same relationship. Sometimes Kashmir is independent, sometimes part of India, sometimes now we have a more complex relationship, autonomous but part of India. So things change. And things change so much that people even forget what their past was. If you tell a devoted Muslim of Kashmir today that why so much of fundamentalism, terrorism, and you want to side with Pakistan just because you are a Muslim, how many generations back you can trace your Muslim origin? Many Muslims got converted to Islam only 1 generation ago, 2 generations ago, 3 generations ago. You all must have heard about Iqbal, सारे जहाँ से अच्छा, who wrote सारे जहाँ से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा. Many people think that how can such a person who wrote सारे जहाँ से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा went to Pakistan. And some people may think that maybe like other Muslims, he also became a fundamentalist or Islamic kind of person, and so he went to Pakistan. We don't know. Actually, Iqbal died much before India became independent. And although Iqbal was living in that area, which is part of Pakistan today, we don't know if Iqbal was alive at the time of independence, what position he would take. Whether he would like to continue to live in Pakistan or come back to India, or maybe stay in Pakistan for a few years, or maybe for a few decades, and then decide to come to India. But the thing is that today a devoted Muslim youth may not even believe the fact of history that a few generations ago they were Hindus or Buddhists, or they believed in something else, some shamanic religion. The most conspicuous change, if we want to study social change, then the most conspicuous change occurred in Tibet. It's interesting to study about Tibet. We think that many of us think, the layman understanding of Tibet in India is that it's a small part of China, which was once independent, and sometime in 50, China annexed Tibet in its own communist boundaries. But Tibet has a very long history, and at one time they believed in some religion called Pon, polytheistic, magical, and in which there was the idea of sacrifice. Every year they will assemble somewhere at their important pilgrimage places and sacrifice animals. Every 3 years there were more important festivals in which they also sacrificed humans. Sacrifice of humans was not uncommon in old belief systems, old religions of Asia, Africa, America. Human sacrifice was there. So they were pawns. They even believed in sacrificing human beings. And there were so many gods and goddesses, supernatural beliefs. Then about 600-700 years ago, they got converted to Buddhism. Now, when they got converted to Buddhism, everything changed. Social order, beliefs, values, practices. When they believed in Pon, they also had a greater relationship with Mongolia. They were closer to Mongolia, although Mongolian barbarous invaders like Khan never entered Tibet. They went up to Turkey, they went to Europe, they captured a large part of China, but they did not go to Tibet for some reason. Maybe it was inaccessible. Nobody ever bothered about Tibet. Tibet remained isolated for millennia and so when they became Buddhists, apart from other things, Buddhism create a belief in compassion, friendship, non-enmity, non-killing, non-violence. So they became non-violent. At one time they were very violent people, brave, violent, politically very assertive. And many Tibetan kings are known to have captured several districts of China from time to time and parts of Mongolia. There was a very good relationship between Tibet and Mongolia. But once they become Buddhists, then they become non-violent. And there is more focus on religion, more focus on construction of monasteries, priesthood. In Tibet, there has been a combination of religion and politics. Most of the time, their highest political figures are also religious figures. And one way of joining military positions or becoming chief in different parts, in different small states of Tibet, was to become a scholar. By becoming a scholar, you could join the political organization of Tibet. And what I find quite interesting, that there, when you study Buddhist beliefs of Tibet, there was not one Buddhist belief. Actually, what I learned, some time ago I developed interest in Buddhism. I started reading something. I got influenced by the idea of Buddhism. And when I read about Tibet, I find that Tibet is a very obvious case of showing that there were thousands of Buddhisms. Buddhism is not one. There are thousands of Buddhisms. There is one Buddhism which gelled very well with their original shamanic or Pon religion. Gods, goddesses, superstitions, supernatural beliefs, sacrifice, tantra, mantra, deities. There was one Buddhism of that kind, which gelled well with Pon. There was another Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism, which also believed in gods and goddesses, but which were more closer to, it was sort of combination of Buddhism and Hindu religion practiced in Assam and Bengal. Actually, it's interesting that most of the intellectual figures of Tibet were those who went from India, or the intellectuals or monks or lamas of Tibet came to India. They came to Assam, they came to Bengal, they came to Bihar. At one time, Bihar, Bengal and Burma. These were three most important places of Buddhist learning. So Tibet is, it was difficult. Somewhere I was also reading that when 10 Tibetan monks came to India, means Bihar or Bengal, or went up to Burma to learn Buddhism, hardly 2 or 3 went back. Others, the terrain was so difficult, passing through Himalayan range, very difficult path, mountainous path. So most of them died, and they thought that if they die while going to India, the land of Buddha, to learn Buddhism, they will not be reborn, they will have nirvana, and only 2-3 persons could go back with learning. And they translated Buddhist literature in Tibetan language, in Chinese, and some of traditional Indian literature of Hindus and Buddhists, you can still find preserved in Tibetan and Chinese language. Several very, very important works of Hindu and Buddhist scholars are no more found in India. You can find them only in, if you know Tibetan language or if you know Chinese, you can still have access to many original and best intellectual religious writings of Hindus and Buddhists. So everything changed. That was another kind of Buddhism. There was also a Buddhism which did not believe in gods and goddesses, which did not believe in superstitions, Hinian, original or orthodox form of Buddhism. Yeah, there is so much of to give you an example of variation which influenced me a lot. Once I was talking to a Vietnamese Buddhist, a monk, and I said that yes, in our country there is a revival of Buddhism, and there is also a political reason behind that. That Dr. Ambedkar, who was in chair while making the Constitution of India, got converted to Buddhism, and he has written several works on Buddhism. Buddha and his Dharma is one of the famous books of Dr. Ambedkar. And that Vietnamese monk told me that they don't like Dr. Ambedkar. Works of Dr. Ambedkar are banned in Vietnam and Burma. And I asked him, we thought that in contemporary times, Dr. Ambedkar has been one great contributor to Buddhism in India. And I asked him, why is it so? Why is it that writings of Dr. Ambedkar are banned in Vietnam and in Burma? And they said that according to real tenets of Buddhism, you are not supposed to criticize any other religion, any other beliefs. Buddha never criticized anyone. Buddha only says that this is the path, but he will not criticize anyone. Criticism of others is against the tenets of Buddhism. And because Dr. Ambedkar took the position that Buddhism is the most rational religion, and Buddha was the most rational religious authorities. And Dr. Ambedkar also said that if there is something irrational in Buddhism, take it out. It's not the real Buddhism. Now, Ambedkar's remarks against Hindu religion, Hindu deities, gods and goddesses, and his rational political form of Buddhism is not appreciated in other purely Buddhist countries. So that is, so things have been changing. Sometime I had sympathy for Tibetan, and that is why I started reading Tibetan literature. But at the end, I became a Buddhist and I felt that things change. It's not that Tibetans are all pure people, and always in history, Tibetans were non-violent, honest, religious, spiritual, good people. Like any other society, they also have rise and fall, a history of rise and fall. There were also times when Tibetans, in cooperation with Mongolian kings, attacked China and captured many parts of China. And for political reasons, there were times when Tibetans gave a certain part of Tibet. Tibet is not a small place. Tibet in size is 5 times the United Kingdom. And several countries of Europe combined, Finland, France, UK, you take 5 or 6 countries of Europe and add their area. That is the area of Tibet. And at some time, Tibetans also gave a part of their land to British Crown, and that became part of India. That was the land which in 1962 war, when Chinese invaded, they only captured that part of Tibet which was once given to India. It was not India's part, it was given to India by Tibetan monarch, the Lama, Chief Lama. And it's another story that finally after defeating India, Chinese on their own, without any reason, on their own, they went back and they surrendered the area they had captured back to India. So things change. Sometimes Tibetans capture Chinese, sometimes Chinese capture Tibetans. There are multiple belief systems, and so accordingly the practices change. One thing when I started to read about this thing, Tibetans, more sympathetically, and finally I lost my sympathy. On net you can find interviews of those Tibetans who fled Tibet after the Chinese army invaded them in 1950s. Now, these interviews can be read from different perspectives. In one interview I was reading that the person was saying that Chinese were bad, Chinese army came to Tibet, size of Tibetan army was small, maybe partly for religious reasons, they were non-violent people and they did not believe in warfare. So there were maybe maximum 50,000 people in Tibetan's army, and Chinese defeated them. Then they started entering different states and different towns, villages, and the Tibetan monk who was interviewed was saying that they incited bad people against us, and Chinese army will come to our house and they will say, you must be a good person, you must share your resources, you must share whatever property you have, means tea, means animals, meat, means staple food, whatever you have, you share with the poor people. Somewhere there was also a threat that if you do not share it with poor people, then we will kill you. Perhaps for political reasons, in no other part of the world, so many people were killed. There are estimates that during Chinese invasion of Tibet, maybe around 10 lakh people were killed, not a small number. Even Hitler did not kill so many people. Again, for political reasons, maybe we criticize, we hate Nazism. We hate Nazism. There is no problem in hating Nazism. Nobody likes Hitler now. So if you are critical of Hitler, there is no stake. But since China is still a very powerful country, so people generally do not talk about what China did in Tibet. Maybe around 10 lakh people were killed, not a small number. But I was thinking that if the Chinese army, which again was not a very large army, which they sent to Tibet, survived and captured the whole Tibet, such a large part of land, and that was done by siding with the poor people, then it is obvious that there was a big gap between rich people who were Buddhists, who believed in Buddhist religion, monks and others, and the common masses. Whatever economy of Chinese, whatever economy of Tibetans was, agriculture, largely based on agriculture. The whole Tibet could not have agriculture, but there were parts where agriculture was well developed, or they raised animals, yak. As we have horses in plains, they have yaks. Yaks were used for riding, for trading, and yaks were also eaten. So there was a big, it appears that despite Buddhism, which is such a compassionate religion, Gautam Buddha always talks of karuna, maitri and upeksha. Compassion, karuna means compassion, love, maitri, love, friendship, equality, upeksha, indifference to worldly wealth and worldly power. So people who were under the influence of Buddhist philosophy, they also had such an unequal social structure. That is why, because they had an unequal social structure, so Chinese communist, Chinese army, which was trained in Mao's philosophy, in Marxist philosophy, they could seek the cooperation from ordinary people of Tibet. So it's not that whenever such invasions take place, then they start killing everyone. Maybe only Genghis Khan did this, but otherwise most of the time when invasions take place, they side with those who are low in social structure and they butcher only those or sideline those who are at the top. So monks were sidelined, monks were killed. And I was thinking after reading that interview that perhaps the common people of Tibet must have had a tremendous hatred towards the monks. And when you read stories of monks, there were many monks who were drunkards, who maintained several wives, and who were not well behaved. So there was a gap between ordinary people and powerful people, landed aristocracy, Buddhists and landed aristocracy and ordinary people, because there was a gap. In this context, what Gandhiji said at one time, that do not think that if the British people have invaded India, it is because of superiority of British people, or that intellectually or militarily or educationally or economically or culturally the Westerners are superior to India. No. The real reason behind our colonization is our own weakness, our own divisions, our own conflicts, internal conflicts, our maybe caste system, maybe our inequality, maybe constant fight between Hindus and Muslims, and greed. One Indian supporting China, one Indian supporting the British army or British chiefs against other Indians because he wanted to compete with that. And the frauds that the British people played on India, Indians themselves sided with them. Sometime for political power, sometime for money, sometime for status, and sometime because we fought with each other as individuals, as groups, as classes, as castes, as communities. So things change. So what I learned after reading little bit of this Tibetan history is that social change is a constant feature of all societies. Societies are always changing. They are changing politically, they are changing religiously, they are changing demographically, they are changing technologically, and each type of change produces another type of change. So there is a theory. One Ogburn, WFOGBURN, there is discussion of Ogburn's theory in your sociology books. He said that the major cause of social change is lag, or this lag, another term he uses is maladjustment. Actually, in the process of change, different parts of society change at different rates. When social change occurs, or when change is constantly occurring, but in the process of change, all parts of society are not changing at the same rate. And since all parts of society are correlated, all institutions of all facts of society are correlated. So when one thing is changing at a fast rate, other things are either constant or not changing at such a fast rate. They may also be changing, but they are not changing at such a fast rate. So it produces some kind of strain on the institutional relationships. Take any two things, A and B. A is changing very fast, fast change. B, slow change. A may be, say, technical or industrial change, and B may be religious change. A society is changing very fast in terms of A, technological, industrial. Other things are also changing, they are bound to change, nothing remains constant. It's wrong to think, if I'm a Hindu, it's wrong for me to think that in this world there was always a Hindu religion and there will always be a Hindu religion. If mankind survives, anything, Buddha says that anything which has a beginning also has an end. So if Hindu religion originated at some time, it will also die sometime. If Islam originated at some time, it will also die sometime. Think everything is changing, and sociologists believe in this, that everything is changing. But some things are changing at a very fast rate. Other things are not changing so fast. Maybe industry or modernization or technological development. That occurs at a very fast rate at some time. And religious changes do not occur at that fast rate. So there will be strain. This strain is the root of all problems of society. It's called cultural lag. There is a lag. Lag may be cultural, lag may be social. Cultural lag, social lag. Social lag. If you are industrially advanced, but the religion does not keep pace, that means when you are in the office, then you adopt a rational, scientific, humanistic worldview. When you are at home, then you are a Hindu or Muslim, and you are governed by irrational or non-rational, supernatural beliefs, some texts and some ideas. Then your cosmology, your metaphysics, your ethics, they are fixed. Whatever your messengers or your gods or the originators of your religion have said, or what your religious texts say, that is the final. No application of mind. So you apply your mind maximally when you are in the office. And you do not permit your mind to work when you are at home. At home you expect that your wife, your children, your uncles, your aunts, and your neighbors will subscribe to the same mentality which is written in your books. No place for application of mind at all. Whether something is desirable or not, you start turning pages of Quran or Ramcharitmanas or Vedas. Let me see, what did Patanjali say on this issue? Let me see, what did Prophet Muhammad say on this issue? And what they said hundreds and thousands of years ago, that is final for you. Now this will create a maladjustment. And many problems of society today, according to Ogburn, are for this reason. Social change is social change causes cultural and social lag, and social change occurs because of social and cultural lag. So now this, when industry changes very fast, when in the office or university or your educational institutions, you are the rationalist of highest order, and when you are at home, then you are irrationalist of highest order. So there is a strain, maladjustment. This is caused by social change. This is caused by change, if not social change, using the narrow definition of social change. This is caused by technical change. But this will produce change. Eventually, either you will make science religious, science will be controlled by religion, or ultimately religion will be controlled by science, and a different kind of religious beliefs will emerge. Maybe then most likely it appears that gradually in religious beliefs also you will become more rational, more humanistic, more open, more flexible. Though there are instances in which science or scientific perspective has not made people more open, more rational, more humanitarian. And rather, for religious reasons, people are ready to sacrifice their life. They are ready to become human bomb. For religious reasons, they are becoming human bomb. And by taking the best advantage of science, by learning and by making bacteriological bombs and nuclear bombs, they want to destroy this world for religious beliefs. Anything can happen. But change is the cause of strain, maladjustment. So many social problems. Ogburn says that many of our social problems are because of the fact that different parts of society are changing at different rates. And unless all of them come to the same rate of change, or unless all of them adjust to each other, there will be some time of strain, maladjustment. And that tells us about the nature of social problems, genesis of social problems. We will continue this discussion after 5 to 10 minutes.